How's Rich doing?
What I was told. He was the one next to me.
That's good.
Over the railroad track.
You see, I was in the other meeting. I only was a few minutes away, but I had to book that meeting. I couldn't make it up here for this, for that meeting up here in time from work. So I put it on and I saw it. I was like, oh, shit, I gotta get up there.
Good meeting.
My whole day has been that way. Just hectic.
Tell me.
Testing.
Wide open.
Going all day because operators with the mining, they're loving this weather. They're working. They're stripping. There's no frost.
It's amazing. There ain't that much frost in it.
What's it all? You got it.
It'll work.
Oh, that'll work. That'll work. And then, are you gonna read that statement?
I'm gonna read this.
Okay. The fall?
I said you'd be calling shortly.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's no
Just giving you a heads up,
Yeah.
you see it.
Okay.
Hey, friend, see if you want to start dialing in. No, you should go ahead. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Hello.
Hi, Fran. Fran, can you hear us? Can you just
Fran, can you hear us?
Okay, not very well.
Hi, is this Terry? Hi, you want to try calling in now? The meeting should be up and running. Okay, thank you. Yep, bye.
Hearing you. Fran had to turn his hearing in.
Scott, just one more. Terry should be joining us.
Fran, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear a little better now.
And Terry, can you hear us?
Jerry,
Hi.
can you hear us?
Apparently he's good.
He said, he must have heard you.
Yeah, yep. Okay, I'd like to call the committee of the whole to order. Roll call has been taken. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried. Approval of the previous committee of the whole minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the previous minutes.
Second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried. Citizens input. Any at this time? Finance and purchasing, review of the financials, monthly invoices.
Closer so they can hear me. So I've provided you with the financials for the month. We don't have the year end done. Our audit is next week. So after that time in January, moving into February, we'll have the actual numbers for 2020 that I'll present to you. Some items to point out to you for December. As indicated, we received our final payment of the $27,000 for the CARES Act aid. Our labor negotiations expenses are just under $20,000 over budget, and the fire truck equipment repairs are just under $10,000 over budget. Other than that, there weren't any other items that stood out unless you had questions on what was presented.
Questions? Treasurer's reports?
Hello, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead. Yes, Fran, go ahead.
I have a question in regards to the invoices. I would like to know the bill for Conway fire hoods. What is that in the amount of $1,045?
Anybody that'd like to speak has to speak on the mat.
Yep.
Just on the mat is fine.
That is the hood that they wear underneath their helmet to protect the firefighter's neck and face from, or face and head from a fire brand. And the new standard, they're about a little over $100 a piece right now. So
I guess I still didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
it's a hood that they wear underneath their helmet to protect their head.
Okay,
And neck.
okay, I hear you now. I kind of suspected that's what it was. All right, not a problem.
Okay, very good. Treasurer's reports?
I already covered that if you still have to do the invoices.
Okay.
There's no if there's no questions on the invoice, we'll make a motion to move those
Yep.
to council. I'll second it.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Protections of persons and property? Nothing at this time. City buildings and grounds? Nothing at this time. Recreation directors? Personnel? Old business? New business? Airport report? Casey?
Sorry. Okay, so a few months ago, there was some discussion at the committee of the whole meeting regarding the airport and where it sits financially. And I asked you to give me some time to be able to put this together for you. I did put this document in your drive to kind of give you a summary of the information I'm going to provide to you. Some general information on the airport. It was established in 1960 and is owned by the city of New Holstein. The original cost of the airport was $160,000. Funding for the airport came from 50% federal government, 25% state, and 25% city, with Tecumseh paying 5/6 of that. The airport has a paved runway of 3,600 feet and a turf runway of 3,000 feet. Our average touchdowns and takeoffs is 7,900 per year. As at the present time, we have 18 hangars leased for private planes with additional lots available for new hangars. In 2013, the New Holstein Airport opened its state-of-the-art terminal, which features a pilot's lounge, FBO office, 4 showers, and a community meeting room. The airport has served the area for a variety of activities through the years, including trading grounds for the Air National Guard, the EAA Chapter 1622, Airport Day in July, the Super Cub fly-in in July, Wings and Wheels event in September, Pancake Breakfast fly-in, flight school, EAA Young Eagles program, emergency management drill sites. And most recently, the airport hosted a paraglide group who camped at the airport grounds. So moving on to the financials, I did a snapshot of the last 5 years to show you revenue and expenditures. I know some amounts were presented of it being a huge deficit, and as indicated, it's not as high as what was projected. So your average deficit can range from $800 to $2,000 every year. We do have a surplus. In 2020, because of the CARES Act, we received $30,000 in funding to help pay for our expenses. The hangars located at the airport are privately owned. The owners pay an annual tax and land rent for the hangars. The city charges $5.5 per front footage. So for a lot that's 10 or 100 by 34, the owner pays $550 a year for the rent. Our average rate is $242 compared to $320 for other small airports located in the state. The airport land, the city rents 22 acres of airport land. Our average cost per acre is $134. Each year, the city receives just under $15,000 in land rent. The average for small airports in the state of Wisconsin in 2017 was $75 to $150 per acre. So we're in the ballpark of that range. Depending on the location of the land near the runway, there are restrictions on what a farmer can plant. Usually they're limited to low-lying crops such as soy and wheat. And the current contracts for the land expires at the end of 2022. There was some discussion about the work that's being done for the Super Cup fly-in. So I summarized it for you from what was done from 2007 to 2015, and then gave you a summary of what they're currently doing. So with the addition of the airport day, more things were added to the list, but I don't think it's changed much from what they were doing. So the average cost for the Public Works Department to do this work for Super Cup fly-in and airport day is around $1,800. And then looking at the custodial services that we have, we ask them to go out there a little bit more frequently during these events just because of the usage, and the annual rate is around $70.50. The Super Cub Club has been coming to New Holstein for over 15 years, and throughout the years they've assisted with the following projects. In 2005, the shelter was built. The Super Cub raised the funds for the project, and Jim Levitt's Shop Class constructed the shelter. The concrete for the shelter was donated, and the city ran the electricity. And then in 2013, the group donated $5,000 towards the shower upgrade. Through the AIP program, the city has a list of projects that we want to continue to be funded. Part of it would be possibly a runway extension, hangar development area, additional paved areas, expand the apron, property acquisition. But the biggest one that we're going to have to focus on is removing obstructions from the approaches, which is trees. There's a lot of areas that the trees are too high, and it's
Most of that's on private land.
private land. I don't know if I got into the AIP very much here, but anything else that you guys wanted to know about it? Any other information you want to hear about the airport?
I would just like to comment that it's been stated at these meetings that the airport's costing us an arm and a leg, and you can see by the financials, that's not the case. And it's a good asset to the community, so I think we need to keep supporting it any way we can.
I agree with you, Bob.
I didn't hear that. Would you run that by again, Bob?
Fran, I just said there's been talk, you know, that the airport has cost us a lot of money over the years, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but looking at the financial end of it, it shows you that really we operate this airport at a pretty slim budget, and we get a lot of good publicity from it, from these Super Cubs that come into town. They spread it all over the world, basically, when they go back, and so I think we need to keep supporting the airport as long as we can.
I don't have a problem supporting it, I just don't know, and when you say we don't have an added expense, we do have an added expense with the airport. We need to keep it in line, that's my biggest concern with the airport that we have.
I guess my comment was, Fran, if you look at what the numbers that Casey laid out for you as far as the financials, you can see it's not exorbitant amounts of money that we're spending at the airport.
Lost my agenda.
Nothing left.
Yeah, that's it. So adjournment, and adjourn this meeting.
We have 7 minutes until we can start the next one.
Talk among yourselves.
Randy, Mike is here.
You want me to roll it?
If anybody intends to speak, there's a list back there you have to sign up on.
I think that'd be, yeah, I don't know what happened.
You went there, so this is right. Eric, this is seeing with others. I wanted you to do that business. Not something else. One before, now, not traditional, section, you know what I mean? Now they're sitting in lockers, and at first I heard them, they're in beats. Fell, broke her arm. Just talked to her about the trees, she said, stop, got them this morning. We're gonna do behind the soccer field, that makes us field, and then that blacktop strip, not the field. It's kind of it.
Oh, Gino.
So you only did,
Yeah.
so he's gonna come off the parking lot.
You see the trees are,
High school is,
They had auditors in last. Right, so we're not gonna do that.
and you probably gotta get out everybody's tax
It's got
paper.
the clock. Yeah.
Rich, have you seen the trees removing this yet?
I haven't.
All right, on it.
I'll check that out.
It's a lot different.
Yeah.
Well, I knew it was.
Couple weeks to.
And that's only what they're doing this year, because they got a 3-year grant. Yeah, so you gotta use, you can't take it all at one time, you gotta get this. Well, we do have to have a tree plan. That's part of the grant. We'll work on that.
Like this, and then sidewalks.
Really?
What's that gonna look
I
like?
have to go and see email all week
You got enough
next
next
week.
week.
And,
Trees are good.
stepdaughter had
I got a call.
I like to look at the different people. Blacks are more expensive.
And she'd been
Really?
told all kinds of
Yeah,
horror
they're a
stories,
couple
so she
$100
was afraid and everything.
Yeah, they're more than three.
That came in, and then I had to go in and have an MRI.
But they have to hold up, you know,
for
for a long period of time.
One guy must not want.
So there's gotta be a better way. I've seen them already where they actually have
Calendar reminder, hit
CDA,
CDA, 4:45.
no, because of the expense. So it's copper, you know, memorial, and you just adjust it out as the tree grows.
What was it made of?
Well, it was like a chipper plate. It's like a dog chain that they hung around a tree, and I thought it was pretty cool. I seen that in one place, I was like, I thought about it, I was like, yeah, we did that because of the gloss of the damn plant.
One thing though you gotta watch out with copper is it's caustic.
Oh, yeah, to the tree.
It will, if you wanna kill a tree,
Oh, I know.
nail a copper nail, something.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't, it's funny, cause you talk to people,
Yeah,
say you go up by Coles, and you see all that green, and it's all copper, they put copper strips on there because then it stops mold.
Yep.
And I didn't realize that.
I killed a willow out there with copper. Because you can't kill a willow, but that way, that was the only way.
Copper, really?
Yep.
Would you use nail or put a piece of pipe or?
Yep, we killed it, you know, because we didn't want to bring in the stump every time.
Right.
And I wanted to try it.
And it worked.
It worked. The other thing I tried in the woods too was, you see if you just cut the ring of bark around the tree, it'll kill it. Well, we had to cut down some 500 beech trees in our woods, and I was like, what, you know, it makes sense, the life is under the bark, but is that really work? So I took my chainsaw and I just buzzed through that thin beech bark, you know, it was not even a quarter inch. And the next year, it was
did?
dead. Killed it.
There was a,
That works.
remember, this was like 20 years ago, they had the gypsy moth problem. Well, then they had studies set up. A guy I knew, he had they put burlap sack around, they wanted him to study it. It was taking a toll on the trees. It's like, man, I really don't want to lose these trees. You know what, the only thing we found that worked on gypsies, the caterpillars, was propane torches.
Yeah, hit my belly.
You burn the fuzz, they drop, the birds will eat them. Oh yeah, it was bad. You could take a spotlight up in the shady side of the trees, and all of a sudden you seen all the gypsy moths. So the one day, it was funny. He lit the burlap sack on fire, and I says, I don't care. I'm going to save my tree. I think it worked too.
Yeah, right? We don't want to. And you've seen tent moths before, right? Where there's a tent in the tree on the branches?
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. I've seen it around here, but more so like in Packing County. And that's really weird. I mean, how they build it, it's quite a nest they build, but it looks like a tent. They use several branches, it's thick, like you can really can't even put your fingers through it, but you can see all the little babies in there. You know? It's pretty cool. But they do some damage too, I guess.
I should drive that way up towards Crandon and stuff like that to see how much of the woods they removed, because when straight line winds came, you could lay that whole forest.
Oh, yeah.
That was crazy. Even going to Wisconsin Rapids.
Well, like up at Brandon, some guys that, they had a food plot, and were laying it out, this land with more deer in there. So that was, hunting season after that storm. And they were shocked when they seen their cameras. A lot of those deer harbored and went down, so their food plot was full. They had all kinds of deer because it was too thick, it's like spaghetti.
All right, it's 6:30, I'll call the meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call be taken. I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd like to make a amendment to the agenda. I'd like to add citizens' comments after the presentation of Mr. Romero and McMahon from Law Enforcement Options Report, Section G, line 5.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the previous common council meeting minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Conkle. Second by Mr. Propson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. This input has been moved to the end. Look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wolfle, second by Mr. Schmitz. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. New business. We have a couple of resolutions recognizing a few individuals. The first one is resolution number 1464. A resolution recognizing and honoring Mike Steffen. Mike, if you could come up to the front here. Whereas Mike Steffen has served as a member of the Holstein Utilities Commission from July 1st, 1986 until October 27, 2020. Whereas Mike's dedication and experience has been an invaluable asset to Utilities Commission, and whereas Mike's participation as a member of Utilities Commission supported New Holstein Utilities in providing reliable utility service through numerous infrastructure projects, including the construction of Ford Drive Substation and the remodeling of Roosevelt Substation, the construction of the Kennedy Drive Water Tower and remodeling of 2 pump houses, and the construction of the Headworks Building and Pump Blower Building at the wastewater treatment plant. And whereas Mike's participation as a member of the Utilities Commission supported New Holstein Utilities in providing competitive rates to customers by the approval of 3 long-range wholesale power supply extension agreements with WPPI Energy, and approving economical annual budgets. And whereas Mike's participation as a member of the Utilities Commission supported New Holstein Utilities initiatives in introducing valuable customer services and programs to improve utility efficiencies such as energy efficiency programs, automated meter reading, new customer services, and billing systems, the New Holstein Utilities website, fiber optic installation, and others. And whereas Mike supported New Holstein Utilities membership in WPPI Energy, MEUW, by attending an annual business meetings, open house for the ERGS power plant, and educational events to increase his knowledge of electric utility industry. And whereas Mike supported the leadership of 4 utility superintendents, general managers, and whereas Mike served the Utilities Commission as secretary from April 2001 to October of 2020. Now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council, the New Holstein Utilities Commission, and the staff of New Holstein Utilities hereby take great pleasure in recognizing, thanking, and honoring Mike for his 34 years of service to the city of New Holstein and New Holstein Utilities, and sincerely extends its best wishes to Mike and on his future endeavors. If I could get a motion to approve the resolution. Motion by Mr. Wolfle, second. Second by Mr. Propson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. There you go, Mike. You have a few words?
I just want to thank the President Mayor Hebel, the Common Council. I was appointed 34 years ago by then Mayor Dennis Rybecki. So I served under a bunch of mayors and also utility superintendents like Randy and Paula. I would be remiss if I wouldn't mention their names and what they do for the utilities. As a common resident, we think every time we go to the light switch, the lights should turn on. We go to the water faucet, we expect the water to be there. We flush the toilet, we expect that to be taken care of. And in the city of New Holstein, we also have the water softeners. So, without great leadership, like you have now and have had, when I joined, it was Ernie Dyer, Sr., and there were several in between there. So, I myself was not born in New Holstein. I was born in the big village of School Hill. I lived there for 40 years. I moved to New Holstein well, 40 years ago. So yes, I'm gonna be 80 years old this year. So I think it was time to retire anyhow. And I also want to thank my wife Marilyn. That's the reason I moved to New Holstein. We'll be married 40 years in October. So I want to thank her for all the dedication and the support that I got from her. And thanks again. And I ask God to bless this great city and bless the utilities. Amen.
Thanks, Mike. You go first. The next action item will be resolution number 1465, a resolution recognizing and honoring Gene Wolfel. Gino. If you stand a little bit away, then I don't have to have this on. Whereas Gene Wolfel has served as a member of the Holstein Utilities Commission and as a liaison between the Commission and the City Council from April 21st, 1998 through March 24th, 2020. And whereas Gene's commitment to serve, knowledge, and experience has been invaluable assets to the Utilities Commission and indirectly to its customers. And whereas Gene's participation as a member of the Utility Commission supported New Holstein Utilities in providing reliable utility service through numerous infrastructure projects, including the construction of Ford Drive substation and the remodeling of the Roosevelt substation, the construction of the Kennedy Drive water tower and remodeling of 2 pump houses, and the construction of the Headworks building and a pump blower building at the wastewater treatment plant. And whereas Gene's participation as a member of the Utilities Commission supported New Holstein Utilities in providing competitive rates to the customers by the approval of 2 long-range wholesale power supply extensions with the WPPI Energy and approving fiscally responsible annual budgets. And whereas Gene's participation as a member of the Utility Commission supported New Holstein Utilities initiatives in introducing valuable customer services and programs to improve utility efficiencies such as energy efficiency programs, automated meter reading, new customer services and billing systems, and the New Holstein Utility website, fiber optic installation, and others. And whereas Gene supported New Holstein Utilities memberships in WPPI Energy and MEAUW by attending such events as district business meetings, the open house for ERGS power plant, and the National Legislative Rally in Washington, D.C. And whereas Gene supported the transition of the operation of the wastewater collection system from the city of New Holstein to the New Holstein Utilities, and whereas Gene served for numerous years as a valuable member of the Utilities Commission Personnel Committee, and whereas Gene supported the leadership of 3 utility superintendents, general managers, and now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council of the New Holstein Utility Commission and the staff of the New Holstein Utilities hereby take great pleasure in recognizing, thanking, and honoring Gene for his 22 years of service to the New Holstein Utilities. Sincerely extends its best wishes to Gene on his future endeavors and thanks him for his continued service to the community. Can I get a motion to approve that resolution?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Busma.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snelson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Gino, any words?
How do you follow up on Mike, you know? But just thank you. The Utility Commission was a good committee to be on. I think we got a lot of things accomplished. And again, the great staff over there, we greatly appreciate you. Thanks.
Thanks, Gene. Randy?
Can I have the floor for just a moment?
Absolutely. Randy, Jay Oakles is our utility superintendent.
First of all, I owe an apology to Mr. Wolfel.
Gene.
I know. But Gene left the commission back in April, and because it was totally off my radar screen, this should have been done months ago. So Gene, I owe you an apology, because you should have been presented this resolution months ago, not so far after the fact. So I want to publicly apologize to you
Thank you.
for that, because it's something that needed to be done. So the other thing is, the people that replace these 2 individuals are doing a wonderful job for us. But when you take 57 years of experience away from the commission, that's a lot. And these 2 individuals gave a lot of time, a lot of their heart and soul to the community. and I just wanted to publicly thank them for all their contributions for a total of 57 years to the community, so thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll move on to ordinance number 652, an ordinance amending 7.12 of Chapter 7, sexual offender residency restrictions, update to the map. Meeting on that. I'll just need a motion to approve it.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr.
Ordinance
Busma.
number 652.
I'll second it.
Motion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Action item, purchase of Freightliner 114 SD from Truck Country, financed through a 4-year lease agreement with Mercedes-Benz Financial Services in the amount of $149,500 to be paid in 4 annual installments of $39,348.41. Jason, do you have anything to add?
I can add a few things if you want,
Okay.
just so you guys can
Sure.
wonder why there's two options there. So the first option is the one we'd like to go with. The second option is deferring the payment for 1 year. That's why there's $4,000 more in interest. So if you defer the first payment, you're adding a lot of interest. So obviously, and the nice thing is I'm still under that 40,000 budget where we want to be in for the next 4 years with the loader will be a rate budget. And the question about the poly plows was brought up last time. So our loader plow is a 2005, and our 2006 is Mark's truck 214. And we've had no issues for them, and they're 15, 14 years old. So it's exact same plows that we had on those with the new one, so I don't have any issues buying a poly plow. And there, after the 4 years, there is no dollar buyout, and I was a little concerned about that. So, because traditionally when municipality lease to owns, you always had a dollar buyout at the end, like our mower. So Casey did talk to the state auditors. You can jump in if I'm wrong, but all he said is that's fine. They don't have to have a dollar buyout. That's the old school way. You can do a straight 4-year payment and you're done. It's yours. So that's what I'd be looking at, the first option. Anybody got anything else?
Any other questions? If not, then I'll look for a motion to approve the purchase.
I'll make the motion, approve option 1 as read.
Motion by Mr. Snelson,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Props. And any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Moving on to discussion, as everybody, all the aldermen know, we hired Mr. Romer, Jeff Romer from McMahon and Associates to act as a liaison with the police department and helping running it. Since prior to that, we had lost our police chief to resignation, and since then, we've had 2 more resignations, one of which all of you are aware of, and then the second one, we received a letter a week ago, Monday.
I'd like to take this, be a good time to read his resignation letter. So, Charles Schrader's resignation letter. Please accept this letter as my resignation as a full-time police officer with the city Holstein Police Department. My last day with the agency being March 10th, 2021. I have been offered a position with the Eagle River Police Department and have accepted a position as a patrol officer with their agency. As many people know, it has been my goal to retire to that area, and this opportunity presented itself. This is not in response to the consolidation process that is playing out currently, but an opportunity that became available for my family's future. It has been a pleasure to serve the citizens of Holstein along with the officers in this department. The level of training, knowledge, and esprit de corps has been shared between officers under the leadership of Chief Reedy and yourself is what made this department one of the best and respected in the area. With that, I would request that as of March 10, 2021, my employment status with the Holstein Police Department be changed from a full-time officer to that of a part-time officer.
So with that, we had hired the McMahon and Associates to do a top-to-bottom evaluation and determine what would be our best step forward. So we turned it over to Jeff Raymer with McMahon and Associates, and I'll let Jeff take it from here.
Good evening. As you heard, we received that last resignation letter like the 12th, so roughly a week ago. That kind of put me into a little bit of a tailspin, having to react and deal with the current situation. We're now in a situation where there's going to be the department will be left with half the amount of officers that it had before, half the full-time, half the part-time positions, which makes it very unstable and difficult, if not impossible, to cover 24 hours, 7 days a week. So I requested to meet with the council to address this situation, put together that initial draft that went out of the options that were available, and scrambled to get you the report in a short period of time, and got that out, and really got the final part of that out today. So you have that. There's 4 options on there, listed on page 6 of the review. I'm strongly recommending moving forward with option 1. I feel that action is needed to be taken immediately, or there'll be loss of coverage in February. A difficult time filling the February schedule. We all realize that the department and the city are struggling right now with this situation in law enforcement services. I'm here to take an objective look at what's going on and present that to you, and make recommendations that are in the best interest of all the citizens. I'm not looking to lay blame on anybody. I'm not looking to personally attack anyone, but emphasizing the need to move forward with a reasonable solution to the problem.
Can you go through the 4 options for the public so they know what we're talking about?
Option 1 is to authorize a McMahon project manager to begin negotiations with the Calumet County Sheriff's Office to provide shared law enforcement services to the city. The goal of these services would be to provide uninterrupted law enforcement services in the city in conjunction with current New Holstein police staff. It's anticipated that this option would maintain coverage and coordinate a smooth transition period that would allow for stability, officer options, short-term coverage, and a long-term solution. And that's the option that we're recommending. Option 2 would be to maintain the current police department. This option would require an immediate hiring process for a full-time police chief and 2 full-time officers. We feel the potential to hire these positions and get qualified personnel is very limited. Due to public hearings, elections, related publicity, it's obvious to anyone who would apply that we're having some morale issues and turmoil within the department and the city. Option 3 would be to consolidate the New Holstein Police Department with the neighboring departments such as Kiel or Chilton Police Departments. Based on interviews with surrounding departments, this has limited possibilities. I've met with both departments, met with the Sheriff's Department. There's not a strong desire by New Holstein, Kiel, or Chilton to pursue that direction. The major difference with this option and option 1 is that the Sheriff's Office has a statutory responsibility to protect the citizens in New Holstein. Kiel and Chilton would not have that responsibility, so they would have to take that on. They'd have to decide they want to take that on. And then option 4 would be to maintain status quo and do nothing at this time. If no action is taken by the City Council, there would be a reduction in staffing and police coverage. School liaison program would be discontinued, and responsibility for coverage when no Holstein officers are available would fall to the Sheriff's Patrol in the area.
So what did you, what were the steps you took to come to this conclusion?
That's outlined in the review too. Interviewed everybody on the department, received a phone call from a council member, interviewed that council member, interviewed Kiel Police Chief, the Chilton Police Chief, the Sheriff's Department. basically gathered a lot of documentation and a lot of information on the department and what the current situation was throughout the county. And then put all that together to move forward with recommendations.
I'd like to ask, to further clarify, option one would be to disband the New Holstein Police Department then, correct?
Well,
And go to county?
It's to begin negotiations with the sheriff's department to look at shared service, utilizing current officers plus the sheriff's department. First of all, just to cover and to come up with a transition period and a direction. Whether that would mean long-term shared services or short-term, that would be part of the negotiations with the sheriff's department.
So that could be considered a short term where they'd help fill in for a chief, or they would be their corporal, or whoever would fill in that spot until we, at a later point, decided if we wanted to keep the police department or go to the county.
It could be that. It depends on how the agreement works out. I can't, what I'm asking the council to approve is going ahead and starting those negotiations and discussions with the sheriff's office. I can't tell you what the sheriff will say. I can't tell you if they'll say they'll agree to long-term shared services or if they want a transition period and then do full coverage.
It's hard to agree on something if we don't know for sure what we're agreeing to.
Correct. Not asking you to agree on the agreement, I'm asking you to agree with moving forward with have those discussions. Those would come back to the council for approval.
So how soon would this action be taken?
Immediately, I would make contact, if you approved it tonight, I would make contact tomorrow. I mean, we literally have a situation where it's gonna be difficult, if not impossible, to cover 24/7 coverage, beginning in February.
So the staff is stretched thin, tight.
Right.
So what happens if one of them either gets injured, sick, or something? Or has the discussions been with the sheriff? Do we have coverage?
We've had initial discussions with the sheriff. We have no agreement in place for the sheriff's department to take over and manage that. The initial discussions talk about having an area car that would be closer to Kiel and would help cover the area.
But not assigned to New Holstein?
Right. But there's no agreement in place to do that at this point.
So I'd like to have an understanding then, if you had the approval to do that, what way would you negotiate? A short term where someone would fill in, or are you going to agree to do a long term where the police is disbanded? Because this is a gray area.
Right. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know how the sheriff will feel about that and how they want to negotiate, how the county feels about that, how open they'd be to a long-term shared service agreement or a short-term shared service agreement.
I think maybe he should be here and present that to the council.
Well, it's not the sheriff that's presenting it, it's us, we're presenting it as an option. This isn't the
So
sheriff coming to
we
us.
asked you to come in and give us a recommendation. Has anybody has any of this people sitting here, the governing body, has anybody influenced or had any conversations with you other than the initial interviews you conducted?
No.
So we've asked
If
you.
I heard you correctly, I've had people contact me, and people come by and visit me through my front door and tell me how unhappy they are with the idea that we would be losing our police department. And the other comment was they wanted to know what happened to the referendum suggestion. And as I look at this, I see that's not even a consideration, an option. So I am concerned, I'm still concerned, and I realize there's a need to get a resolution here. But I am concerned that we are rushing into a judgment that we will not be able to correct. The
business with the school liaison. It says here we have to initial something with the county. As far as I'm concerned, that's a school district decision. If they want school liaison and we can't provide it, then it's up to them. Why are we involved in it? And it looks to me when I read through this, and believe me, I've read it 3 times, and I'm still puzzled a little bit by it, in that it seems basically no different than the recommendation you brought to us months ago, Jeff. It doesn't seem to be any new information in there that would prevent or change, I guess, change your mind on this decision. That worries me a little bit. I don't think we properly vetted our discussions and the decisions that we're being asked to make. That's my side. I would be a no vote totally on this, based on what my constituents have said.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Mr. Schmitz. Go ahead,
Well,
Fran.
we as a council can no longer jeopardize the safety and protection of our citizens of Navalstein. I totally respect the input, the opinions of the citizens to keep our police department, such as Terry just brought up. We all know this is going to be a difficult decision, but it needs to be made to protect our citizens and our community. Therefore, I am supporting the recommendations of the command consultants to have Calumet County Sheriff provide all law enforcement services to our city, with the understanding that the transaction doesn't take months to be agreed upon. That's my feeling.
Okay, so let me just clear something up here, Jeff. When we sat down with you, the city administrator and I sat down with you, what we gave you was top to bottom evaluation of the police department and the needs of the city. What you came up with was what we would go with, and what I said to you was that if your study comes back and you recommend 9 officers, then that's what we go with. It was not, this is what I want, this is what the city fathers want. Whatever your firm decides, that's what we'll go with. Now, if circumstances wouldn't have played out as they have, it would maybe have been a different decision. But where we are at right now, we need to make a decision.
I have a question. Is there a hiring freeze on the police department right now, that they're unable to fill positions?
Statutorily, the only person that, you want to answer this?
Well, there's not a hiring freeze. Statutorily, the police chief has to do the hiring of an officer.
I'm sorry, but I can't hear.
According to statutes, the police chief has to hire officers. So we have not pursued that at this point. There is no named police chief. So I'm not sure where Department of Justice would stand on that. They've been notified that I'm in the position administratively. But we have not, there's been no discussion or been given no direction to move forward with any hiring.
And our legal attorney has told us that the police chief appoints, the Police and Fire Commission appoints the chief. So there's no freeze, we just can't legally hire anyone, correct?
I think you could potentially hire somebody. I think that we'd have to get a Department of Justice ruling. It would be, with me acting as administrator and not as police chief, if they would approve that. But I think the issue with hiring, and that's option 2, is it would be very difficult to hire right now, and it takes time. And that's not going to cover the 24/7 shifts that you're in a situation you're going to have in February.
This situation didn't just happen overnight. It happened fairly fast because of the way it was presented. I've talked to lots of my people. I work for them. They pay the bills. This is their house. If they want to have a police department and they're paying the bill, they deserve the final say. I wouldn't go to your house and tell you, hey, I want a Mercedes Benz or whatever.
I'm not going to your house and telling you that. I'm telling you what the options are and the recommendations. It's your choice.
Ms. Busma?
I think we established this, several meetings back, a month or so ago, that the city residents would like a police department. I think the issue is right now, we got a half a police department, and we need to either not have coverage sometimes during the day, if we wanna cut out third shift or whatever we wanna do. We don't have the people to cover that, the officers to cover it. So we have an issue right now on what to do now. We're shorthanded, which is what he came back with, and their recommendation is to try to come to some agreement so we have coverage. And Keel and Chilton are not interested in it. Calumet County has to by law. If we have to work something out with them to cover for those hours, we're gonna have to do it. That's the issue right now. Whether you wanna have a referendum down the road or whatever, that will come. But the issue now is, if we want 24/7, we have to make a decision to go with one of these options. It's not Mr. Romer's fault. He came in as an individual that looked everything over as a neutral, and this is what he saw. I mean, let's just be reasonable and understand that things happen. We knew when this issue came up, it was gonna cause people to think certain ways, both staff and everything. And the things are just happening, they're progressing, but we have to deal with it. If you wanna have 24/7, we have to make a decision.
Mr. Wolfle?
I guess
I agree.
the key, thank you for agreeing. The key thing of this option one is to begin negotiations. It's not to sign an agreement. It's to begin negotiations with Calumet County. So I think that's what we need to do. And start and figure out where we're gonna go from here. Because right now, we're in a world of hurt.
So, because option one was the one you recommended, I reached out to a county administrator, and I asked him if, obviously, I'm gonna use an example of buying a car. But what I asked was if we could have some citizens, as well as council members, sit in on the options of that car, just to make sure that it fit our city's needs. But obviously, the price tag would be up to the council. So that was something that he said we could do.
Well, I'm just going through with everybody that had talked to me and everything. Would it be a possibility to start looking into one of these options, but at the same time, leave it open-ended to a referendum come later?
That's a possibility. I think you're, if I know, and I'm not positive in this, but I think you were at a point where if it was an April referendum, you're already past the deadline, or the deadline, I think was like this Friday, to submit anything for that, so you'd be talking November.
Well, yeah, but is there something that can be put in the contract where it's left up at that time to be on a referendum?
It would depend on what the sheriff's department would be agreeable to, and you would be agreeable to it. It's a negotiation thing. I don't know that they would go for that or not.
And your discussions with the sheriff, our current staffing, we wouldn't have the issue of they might get hired on, they would be still, because the way it reads, that in conjunction with current New Holstein police staff.
Right, the shared service portion, we would keep our current staff and work with the sheriff's.
Including our administrative assistant. Well, the
Potentially.
reports
That-
have to be done, I would assume.
Specifics we're not.
Well,
we're not
that has to
discussing.
happen. So I guess, well, what's the worst case scenario on our 24-hour coverage? I mean, when do you see it becoming, like, the captain had told me that she was good to go until January. That her staff was willing to do what they needed to do to cover. But we are after January and we're down, gonna be down one more officer.
February will be a problem.
So the immediate discussion with the sheriff would be, how do we temporarily fill the hole? And then, how our department and the sheriff's department can work in conjunction with one another for a period of time? I can live with that. As long as our staff is maintained, and we are looking at what's best in the future. I mean, I guess we're getting to test drive what I was pushing 4 months ago. Correct?
Pretty much.
And, I don't know, anybody? Go ahead, Richie.
I'd like to ask, so to my understanding, the police and fire, or the chief appoints. Now, who puts the chief in position?
Police and Fire Commission.
So who authorizes them to hire a chief? The council?
City Council.
Can you explain the length of time it would take to hire a chief? To get a batch, get a list of candidates,
Generally, it takes-
vet them, interview them.
Generally, it's a 4 to 6 month process. And not just the chief, you know, it'd be a process, about the same amount of time to hire officers.
So our part-timers, we've done it before, and I talked to Police and Fire Commission and President, and I talked to the captain. We've done it before where we've elevated part-timers to full-time. I know several of them have jobs. Do we have any that would be interested in that?
We do have potential that one would be interested, that I'm aware of.
That was part of my question too, is with your current staff, how many part-timers are taking more full-time role? And then out of the 4 part-timers, you're saying you only have 1 that might be interested in a full-time job?
Correct, the other ones have full-time jobs. And some will be. Excuse me? There's one that would be interested, the other ones are not interested in full-time positions. And there's also a situation where one works more during the summer, so his availability will start reducing in a few months. And we have one that's out of medical leave.
So with the sheriff's contract where they got 6 full-time police officers, what we would go with, what would you consider a good option for if you stayed to have our own police force? Would you need part-time officers, or even if you had 5 or 6? If you had 5 full-time officers, how many part-time would you need to cover that? You don't need your full potential we originally have right now. What would be your recommendation on a standard that you could get by with?
Well, I guess you have to answer
what
the
we
question, who would be running the show?
Right.
Who would be running the show under the option, the sheriff's department?
If we go that direction, yes. Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
if we stayed with what we had, what would be your recommendation on how many positions we would have to fill to get by on a budget?
The department right now is allotted 6 full-time positions and 6 part-time positions. We have 3 full-time right now, and we have 3 part-time, and 1 out,
Right.
1 medical.
Well, I know what we have. I mean, what
I
would we
think
need to
that's-
get by to stay with a budget where if we had to minimize that and still be where we're at? Because we're going with the sheriff's department, then we're getting 6 full-time no matter what, right? But
Right.
0 part-time.
Well, if we do a shared service, no, we would utilize our officers plus the sheriff's department officers to cover. So we'd still have part-time.
We still have
If we
So-
went-
so
if
they
it was
would
a full
still-
contract for the sheriff's department and they took it over, they would not have part-time.
The sheriff knows that the part-timers would be included.
Right now in the
Because
sheriff's
the
service.
sheriff's department doesn't have part-time.
Right, right.
But that was part of your discussion, that would be acceptable?
Initial discussion.
Okay,
No,
okay.
Nothing's been agreed on with that.
I mean, Brad, are you asking?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Are you saying that the sheriff department could provide part-time services?
No, I'm saying that with recommendation one, we would negotiate a shared service agreement with the sheriff's department, and that would include our officers, our current officers, full-time and part-time, along with their full-time officers.
I understand that, but I guess I'm hearing something a little different with people wanting to have, or is it possible to have the Calumet County Sheriff provide services on a part-time basis from the sheriff department? That's my question.
Potentially, yes.
Brad, were you asking before for the police department, what we needed for personnel to make it efficient? Is that
Right.
basically what you're asking?
Right now.
Okay. I think it was two
tweak-
years ago.
To tweak our system that we have now, what do we need to get by, and if you had stated on a budget, how many full-time officers do you think we need and part-time? If you could bring up one part-time, well, then you're already at 4.
Well, right now, you're getting by 4 full-time positions and 3 part-time, but
Getting by.
it's barely getting by.
I would have to think that not many vacation days have been taken or comp days.
Right, they've been working a lot of overtime, which is not gonna last.
No.
They're not
I mean, they gotta be worn out.
Our key to the puzzle is
I shouldn't say overtime.
Basically.
They're working a lot of part-time hours. Part-time is working a lot of hours.
right?
Pardon?
A key to our puzzle is a chief.
Correct.
Mr. Conco?
Now, Jeff really can't answer our questions unless we allow him to negotiate, because we're asking him questions of things that he doesn't even know. He hasn't sat at the table with anybody. He needs to at least sit at the table and come back to us with what he's found out. I mean,
Right.
without that, you're asking him questions he can't answer.
Hypotheticals.
Yep.
He answered my question.
Yeah, I mean, in your case, that's a little different.
But to answer that question, Brad, it isn't, he can't just go like that. It's,
No, he can, it was a question, but he answered it. I mean,
you know,
the information that I wanted, he gave me.
Another
But I
question.
do agree, we need protection right now,
Yep.
but
Are we missing coverage right now
We will be in February.
in February? The county could give us one person to fill in that spot, correct?
I don't know.
not without doing it contractually. They're not gonna give us, they've told us that before, because we had asked, when Mr. Busman and I went and met with the sheriff and the county administrator in July, June, whatever, we had discussed the possibility of, let's say, 4 hours, 4 hours of coverage, say 3 AM to 7 AM, and it didn't interest the sheriff at all. He said that it would be of no financial benefit to either side. So I guess the bottom line is we need to have Jeff go to the sheriff, make sure we stay covered, our people aren't working we're in COVID, for God's sakes, all we have to have is one of them go down, and the potential of it is all of them. So we need to have a plan in place, not for that drastic, but to get us by. Are you completed with completed with the entire study of what we should have, or has this pushed it to this?
It pushed it to this, and decisions have to be made now.
Right.
Before we go to a vote, I believe I had asked for amendment that let the public have comments or questions.
Jeff, I got one more question, because I don't know, what dictates that you have to have 24-hour coverage in a small city like this?
5,000 people. Population of
Because-
5,000, you're required to have law enforcement coverage.
Right.
so we got.
So under that, you don't
No.
have to provide it, under
We're the
5,000?
same size as Howard's Grove, they don't have 24-hour coverage.
Same with the police and fire commission, if you're under that side, you don't have to have police and fire.
But we decided as a city or as a department that we have 24/7 coverage. And is that, you know, in our, you know,
Maybe
where is
Mrs.
that written, or why does it,
Maybe
can that be
Miss-
changed?
Maybe Mrs. Neeson can advise, do you know when the police department was started? Not that you were there then, but your dad, I think it was, does anybody know?
Well, I was there, I don't know when it was started, but, when it was started, but I remember when I was a kid, there were 2 officers. We were Mayberry, we had 2
Yeah.
officers in town, and that was it.
And
Only
how the-
one was on at the time.
Probably.
Yeah.
And how, and your dad was, and how they were alerted was a light was turned on the water tower to tell them that there was a call. So anyways,
I mean, that's just how things have progressed.
so, but, you know, the city decided that, Keel decided, Chilton decided to do it. Calumet County wasn't a 24-hour coverage until the 70s. So, is there any issues with the discussion now?
You guys have to decide that.
I mean, I think our hands are tied. We have to go with option 1. Because we have to provide coverage. If we're gonna have 24/7 coverage, we're gonna have to try to come to some contractual agreement with the county to cover that missing space.
I kinda agree, but at the same time.
Mr. Mayor,
Go.
I kinda agree, but
Mr.
at the
Mayor?
same,
Hold on, Mr. Schmitz, Mr. Propson speaking.
I kinda agree, but at the same time, when he goes and talks to the county, I think he's gotta reiterate that most of the citizens, some of the citizens still want their voice heard, you know, come at a later date. You know, that option to either
Well, we're not-
proceed with.
Well, no,
We're not saying,
moving forward.
we're not saying we can't build up the police department again.
Yeah, I
The
know.
issue he's presenting to us right now is either we have coverage 24/7 or we don't.
Right.
It's
Well,
as simple as that.
I understand that, but I think the people in the city wanna have that, know that it's in that contract, that it's up to them at a later date, you know, to determine where to move on once we pick an option.
I don't think anybody that, in the council that has spoken so far has adamantly said we're shutting the door on the police department. I think we're just looking at plugging out the dam.
But you know, if it's not in writing, anything can happen.
Nothing's in writing right now. I mean, what's the difference if you go with option 1 and then you're still looking for a police chief?
Put that in your motion when you make the motion. That we're gonna
Mr. Mayor?
contract for the missing hours, or missing that we have to cover.
Go ahead, Mr. Schmitz.
I guess we're looking at something here, and when we had the hearings in regards to a couple of months ago with the residents that came up opposing us with the police department, they made it perfectly crystal clear. They wanted to have 24/7 protection. And now suddenly we're putting a Band-Aid on it, saying, well, that's okay just to get us by and eliminate the protection. Now, what the hell are we doing?
Would you like to make a motion?
Do I want to?
Yeah,
Public discussion.
Yes, I'll make a motion.
go
We
ahead.
go with the proposal with McMahon on item number 1 to consolidate all law enforcement services for our city with the Calumet County Sheriff Department, with the understanding that the transaction doesn't take months to conclude.
Do I have a second on that?
I would like discussion.
You have a motion on the floor.
Get a motion.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Hearing none, motion fails. All right, if nobody objects, we'll let the, did you have a question?
No.
If nobody objects, I'm gonna have we have 3 people that wanna speak. 1, 2, 3. 3 people that wanna speak. First one is Lisa Jacobson.
Mr. Mayor, may I remove my mask?
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Jacobson. I would like to briefly give my views about the decision that you're about to make about our police department. To the council members, you have a hard job. I'll bet that some of you absolutely do not want to be here right now. People are mad. Some folks are going to be mean. They're going to say mean things. You have a hard decision. I liken the choices that you have to deciding what condiments you want on your garbage sandwich. Actually, it's a different kind of sandwich, but we are in a public forum. I get it. I'm on the school board. Most of the time, nobody shows up. But sometimes you have to deal with something really, really personal to people, and it can get ugly, as you know. I've been called names, I've been yelled at, I've been pointed at. It's not always a bright and sunny thing to be a public official. That being said, and it breaks my heart to say this, some of the controversy on this topic and the animus from the people sits 100% with the people on this board and on the shoulders of the mayor. This could be the best idea ever to come down the road, but the way it was handled from the beginning just smelled bad. There was zero transparency and communication with the public on the issue of the safety of our community. And in the eyes of many, the treatment of our police friends was horrible. I'll let others pick apart the report if they choose. I want to talk about the big issue. At this point, it really isn't about the money. It's about a total breakdown in support of our police department by the city. The gentleman here spoke of the projected difficulty in hiring new officers because of low morale and turmoil in our city. Mr. Mayor, you told the people while you were running for office exactly what you were going to do, and you did not lie. You promised to be a bull in a china shop, and you did what a bull does. And it got messy. Now it's time to pick things up. Please understand, I want whatever it is that you decide to do with our police department, I want it to work. I pray every day that it works. And it's time to set things right and calm things down. Once a decision is made, it's time to accept it and then to heal. And it's going to be hard for a lot of people. In April, there will be at least 2 new members on this council. It is my hope that lessons learned will have resonated with everyone. I hope that old and new eyes can view things in a different way and then work together to get our city back on track. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
The next one is Tom Birschbach.
The question was brought up before of the April election. Is the referendum question going on the April election?
We haven't gotten there. We were gonna have McMahon and Associates give us an idea of what to do, but we've had 3 officers leave the ranks, and now we're stuck with making an immediate decision. So no, it's not on the, we had no intentions of doing anything. So it's not on the ballot.
The other question is just a comment. Once you go down that road, you're gonna need an endpoint, or you're gonna wind up just keep on coasting down the road, and you're gonna be losing officers, and the county is gonna be coming in. When will it stop? Thank you.
And the last one is, we haven't heard from her in a while, Becca Moser.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I think that there's a lot of people here again tonight because there's a renewed talk of this issue. And this feels like a backdoor way into getting what was brought up several months ago, but now it's a crisis. But I don't believe it was a crisis that ever needed to happen, and that I believe in my ward is what people told me as well. So I guess I have a question, if I'm allowed to ask. In your research, did you determine what all of a sudden has caused
morale issues and turmoil within our department, because as people who have lived here and worked here, this is not something that we've dealt with in the past, and we had a pretty stable and steady department that we all knew of. We didn't hear of mass problems until more recently, so I guess we're curious to know why.
I think the action that was taken and, you know, the action and the reaction to what the action that was started with looking at going to the sheriff's department, which is not an abnormal situation, caused, for whatever reason, the chief to leave, and then it started falling apart.
So the reason we can't find people, recruit people, we have, you know, the way that you worded it was we're gonna have a hard time recruiting people, is because we looked at outsourcing. So it's almost like the solution is due to the problem that was created. It wasn't an organic problem that sprung up, it was created. It caused turmoil, and now that same turmoil means that we're having a hard time recruiting and hiring people. So it's this endless circle now that puts the people who live here in a pretty bad position, because now it's like the solution is going down the road that most people didn't want to go down. And so we're kind of in a pickle, and we understand that because we don't want there to be lapses in coverage. We don't want people's safety to be at risk, but we didn't want, the overwhelming feeling is that we didn't want to outsource. But now that's potentially one of the only solutions that we have. And I guess it just, how long ago did Chief Reedy actually leave? Like, when was his last day?
November 11th.
So November 11th. I know that there was timing there of asking if anybody wanted to step into the role of chief or interim chief, and nobody stepped forward for that. I don't understand the delay in recruiting for a new chief. Why have we dragged our feet? It's now the end of January, and now we have a crisis that we're gonna have a lack of coverage in February. People leave. I mean, Officer Schrader is going to a different place. He said it wasn't due to the turmoil. That's part of life. But why all of a sudden are we so incapable of dealing with it? I think priority one was if nobody wanted to be the chief. And why did nobody want to be the chief? I just think that there are issues that we're not addressing as to why we have the issues. And that's just that's like putting a Band-Aid on a flood. And then we don't want to outsource, but now that's one of the only options we have. It's like we're afraid now we're gonna have lack of coverage, dire in February, and it's the end of January. It's a backdoor way of getting what was being pushed a few months ago in a hurried way. It's still not right. Priority one should have been to recruit for a chief so that we could hire officers, because that's the person who can hire officers. So we've sat still since November 11th. That's a self-created problem. So I guess I would say, I understand there's ways that you can word it, but I think that priority one is get a chief. People in the city do not want to outsource. That was made clear. If you do that down the road, it took 2 years. That's what we learned at the public hearing. It took 2 years for them to make that change. So don't hand us off to the county and say, well, they don't have a chief, now they're losing 2 more people. Yes, we had the county come in. That's like too simple. We want to, so get a chief in, and that 4 to 6 months. I mean, it's gonna be a crappy situation for a while. But why have we waited now since November and nothing has moved forward to fix it? And I would like to still address, all of a sudden, why are there issues with morale? Why are there issues with, why does no one want to be the chief? Those things is what the council, I think, should probably figure out so that we can, I think when something is kind of broken, rather than just wipe it out completely, I think we should try to rebuild it and fix it and make it work. I don't think we should just abandon ship because we have some current issues that might eventually kind of resolve themselves with elections and things like that. Thank you.
Okay, that's it for speakers.
I'll jump in here since everybody else is not, at least I can't hear anybody. Was that Casey speaking?
No. It was Becca Mosier.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure I knew who was speaking. as I said before, I don't hear most of the meeting, and that's not anybody's fault but mine for not being able to attend. But I will say this, I'm against option one. Option two, if that's using, the county on a temporary basis until we can find people, that would be an option. I believe a better option would be, we should have been looking for somebody. There's gotta be people who would be willing to come to a 3,300 population community. And I too would like to know what started this. I talked with the chief a bunch of times, and never once did he seem to be upset. Did he seem to be unhappy? Yeah, sometimes he seemed frustrated. But suddenly this thing all blew up. So I've often wondered what the root cause was. And we've never heard this. And we can meet in closed session, and we can get all of, as one would say, the dirty details. But that hasn't happened either. So I'm skeptical of a lot of the things. And that really doesn't make a difference at this stage in my career. But it does to me personally, I think it does to my constituents. That's all I have to say.
Any further discussion with the council? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to go with option two.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to go with option two and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
Conkle, Schmitz, did you vote?
I did it on.
Okay. Motion carried.
See what happens. See what happens. That's exactly right. There you go.
We'll move on to miscellaneous business, a proclamation to recognize Distinguished Person of the Year, Jim Stecker. Whereas James Jim Stecker, who was co-chair of the New Holstein Veterans Memorial, oversaw fundraising and construction and served as the Zion Lutheran Church treasurer for 13 years, as well as the board of trustees and stewardship for over 20 years, also serving as finance chair. And whereas Jim has been a member of the New Holstein American Legion, Post 124, for the past 67 years, 40 years of the Honor Guard Firing Squad, 7 years as post commander, and 15 years as adjutant. And whereas Jim served as the Holstein Cemetery trustee for 37 years, 30 of those years as secretary, and 26 years as sexton. And whereas he served 30 years on the New Holstein Police and Fire Commission, 25 years on the Civil Defense Commission, and whereas Jim has served as Calumet County Board Supervisor for 23 years, all those years on the Calumet County Children of Disabilities Education Board, as well as serving on other various county committees. Whereas he served as the co-president of the Wisconsin Association of Local Health Department and Boards, 6 terms as national treasurer for the National Association of Local Health Boards, and whereas he has volunteered for 10 years on the Aid Association for Lutheran Locals Chapter Council. And whereas Jim has displayed exemplary dedication and service to our community through endless passion and volunteerism. Now therefore, I, Jeffrey R. Hebel, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor, and on behalf of the entire Common Council and all our citizens, do hereby present to Jim Stecker this certificate of public recognition, extending to him our deep appreciation and gratitude for his distinguished service. Congratulates on being named Distinguished Person of the Year for 2021. In witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of New Holstein to affix this 20th day of January 2021. With that, meeting is adjourned.